First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Everyone, I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now. Thank you for joining us. We are live streaming here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom every afternoon starting around 1 p.m. And we are live here. And of course, you can watch all of these segments after they are up. Go to KPTV.com, click on the Fox 12 Now tab, the Fox 12 Oregon app, another great way to do that, or we're on YouTube. This is something that we're tackling today, though, and that is utility rates. And as many of you have probably heard, there have been requests to raise utility rates around Oregon. Those requests are put in and then need to be approved. But we're going to talk about that process. That's something that I think is very confusing for a lot of people, and including myself here, to understand exactly how this works. Now, this really stemmed from a report of an increase for PGE, Portland General Electric, that they have requested. So at the beginning of this year, there was an 18% increase in rates for consumers for this year of 2024. About a month later, they put in a request for 2025, asking for a 7.4% increase for 2025. That has now recently been upped to a 10.9% request for an increase. So with that, and again, that was from PGE, we decided to talk to the Oregon Citizens Utility Board about how this process works and how somebody can have a voice in helping to decide whether these rates are accepted or not. So we spoke to Bob Jenks from there. He's going to walk us through that process and understand a little bit more about how these rates are decided upon, who it is that's making these decisions, and some of what you can do if you'd like to voice your concern about those increasing utility rates. Let's go ahead and run this right now.
Right. The Oregon Citizens Utility Board is an independent nonprofit that was created by Oregon voters to represent the interest of the residential customers. That means we intervene at the PUC at the state regulator level to fight rate increases by companies. We get involved in the legislature to represent customers on issues related to energy and telecommunications. And we really are an advocate for the customer, the customer themselves, and trying to make sure their voice is centered and is heard. In the regulatory process that determines what we pay for our electricity, for natural gas, and other utilities.
So any kind of public utility that we end up using, and this is an avenue for people to go to, but also for you to advocate for those consumers. So yeah. Looking at what we're talking about here with this particular rate increase, so just for context, I know I've explained it to everybody, but just again, at the beginning of this year, and we're looking at Portland General Electric in particular, because that's the topic of this conversation, but this is utilities, companies as a whole, this is how these rates go. At the beginning of the year, PGE had an 18% increase for the year 2024. They requested, I believe it was about a 7% increase for 2025. They've now increased that to a 10.9% increase for 2025. And looking at those rate increases, they request that. Where does that rate increase request go, and how does that approval process work?
Right. Now, I appreciate that question. But they started out in February, just after the last rate increase, asking for another one. It started out at 7.4%. What they're allowed to do is to update some of those costs over the course of the year, particularly their power costs. But PG really has more than a dozen different rate-making mechanisms that they can update costs in. But what's happened is since February, when they filed that case, they filed a couple updates to their what's called net variable capital. It's essentially fuel and market purchases and things like that, saying those costs are going up. And they're now at the point where they're requesting a 10.9%, so we're back up into double digits for an increase. And we're concerned that this can keep growing. There's no reason to believe that this is the upper limit to what they can ask for. Last year, we saw the increase was projected to be much lower during the first half of the year, and then it kept growing and growing and growing during the second half of the year and ended up at 18%. So we're trying to sound the alarm now that we're already in double-digit territory, and this could get much worse because fundamentally customers can't afford their utility bills, which are essential. You can't live without heat. You can't afford that to be going up 3, 4, 5 times the rate of inflation year after year without having to make significant cutbacks in somewhere else, or as 8,000 customers found out in April and May, get cut off from utility service because you can't afford to pay the bill.
Yeah, which is something that we have certainly heard a lot about when we see these kinds of increases. Now, you mentioned that this could increase even more. So this is a request that they have for this 10.9%. What is the cutoff for that rate to be determined for 2025, or is there one?
The commission, ultimately this goes to the Public Utility Commission. They will make the final determination in December. PGE can update some of these costs, the power costs that I was talking about, they can update those into the middle of November. So that's part of what we think is the problem, is you're going to get a winter rate increase, but you won't know what that winter rate increase is really until the very end of the year. And it makes it hard for folks to respond to that, to make rational energy decisions, to make decisions about, should I put in a heat pump, should I do X, Y, or Z, because my bills are going to be higher when the information about how high those bills are going to be is not transparent, and it's not really given out to customers until the very end of the year.
Yeah, and so that could technically go into effect right then. Basically, if we're talking about the end of December, that could go into effect in 2025, and that's what your rate increase is going to be. So several questions that I have here too, and thank you very much for going through these. But when we talk about those requests for increases, you mentioned a few of those reasons. They said that fuel costs, I believe, is part of what it was. But what are some of those other factors that they put in there, at least even historically, for asking for these rate increases?
Right. This rate increase, I want to be careful. The fuel costs and things have been part of what's grown it from 7.4 on. The 7.4% increase included all kinds of things from their salary increases, their bonus increases, customers buying stock for some of their employees, increase for their profit margin, a bunch of money invested into the wires and poles that go up and down a street, a couple battery storage projects that won't even come online until 2025. So there's a variety of stuff that they're spending money on. That all contribute and all add up to this. And that's part of our concern is that PGE wants to spend money on literally everything. They're not focused enough. They're not disciplined enough. They're not worried enough about the impact on customers. They're not setting priorities. They think they can do everything, and they can't. That's not affordable. That's not sustainable. And so what we really think is regulators, the Oregon Public Utility Commission, needs to crack down and constrain PGE spending and make clear to the company that it can't spend money faster than its customers and can afford to pay their bills. That's just not going to work. That's not sustainable, and it has to stop.
And I want to talk here in just a minute, too, about some different things that people can do to help voice their opinion in addition to what you're doing. About looking at this as the whole, since 2021, PGE's increased their rates 43.8%, over just these last few years. Historically, looking at that, is that typical of a rate increase for a utility like PGE to have that kind of a rate increase, or is this something that's abnormal given the history of the request?
This is really abnormal. From about the time Oregon put in its RPS, the Renewable Portfolio Standard, and committed to clean energy in 2008, up through 2020 when PGE closed the Boardman coal plant. PGA did a lot of good work to clean up their system, to reduce carbon emissions, and all did it by maintaining their rates under the rate of inflation. So this is really something that's happened in 4 years. They seem to have adopted a new business model that's really about let's go out and we can attract investors by talking about how much capital investment, how much money we have to spend on the system. And so to attract investors, they're really focused on let's spend money, let's invest a lot of money into our system, let's rebuild all our wires and poles throughout the system, let's build new transmission, even transmission in North Dakota, let's do all kinds of things, let's build batteries, and some of this stuff is necessary, but is it all necessary right now? Can it be spread out on a different timetable? Can they manage their system for better rate impacts? And we believe they can. They used to. But we think there's been a change at the company, and suddenly they're really focused on this story of we're a utility that gets to spend lots and lots of money, and we have regulators who will support us spending lots and lots of money. So we're a great place for shareholders to make investments in, and the customer is getting lost in that story.
And with these rate increases, you're talking about that. So historically, going back to that as well, so things seem to have changed there around 2020. Do these rate increases typically get approved just across the board by the Public Utility Commission, or is
they oftentimes get cut. And so I mean, we're challenging broad efforts in this rate case. We're challenging them asking customers to pay millions of dollars for stock options for their employees. We don't think it's in customers' interest to align employees with shareholders. We think employees ought to be working in the interest of customers. We're asking for cuts in their profit margin. We're asking for disallowances in a number of their expenses for customers. The PUC staff is recommending dozens and dozens of adjustments downward to reduce the rates associated with this. Industrial customers have their own set of reductions. So there's a bunch of people who have looked at this case and said PG doesn't deserve anywhere near this amount of money, are recommending major reductions to that. And ultimately, the commission's going to have to sit down and look at what PGE wants, look at what all the recommendations are, and make a determination.
And for this determination to be happening, obviously you're going to be advocating for these things, but for the ordinary people out there, the customers, citizens, people who are probably watching this, how can they make their voice heard and even access the knowledge, the information as far as what it is that PGE is requesting, given PGE is the example in this situation?
Right. The best thing a customer can do is to go to the PUC, and at the PUC's website, there should be information, really even on the home page, about how to respond, how to put in a public comment about PGE's rates. If it's not there anymore, if somehow that disappears, people can go to OregonCub.org, our website, and we have information there about how to respond and submit information to the PUC, and let the PUC know that you don't think this is appropriate, you don't think this is affordable. We encourage customers to tell their own story. Tell them about how these rate increases are affecting them. You don't have to be an expert on distribution or transmission of electrons. You don't have to have any expertise on the electric system to know what you can afford and to tell the commission about your story and about what you can afford and what you can't afford. So we encourage customers to do that. More than 2,000 customers have weighed in with public comments in this rate case, which really is unprecedented, and we think the commission should keep hearing from customers.
Will they factor that in? Is that something that is factored in as far as this public feedback?
We believe so, yes.
Okay, and you mentioned that over 2,000 so far, and that's unprecedented compared to previous.
Yes, I don't ever remember a case with anything close to 2,000 responses from the public.
And that's just so far. So that is where, again, thank you, for that information as far as how they can go about doing that for the people watching. And you mentioned your organization too. Can you give that website again, just where they can go access the information and interact with you?
Yeah, it'd be www.oregoncub.org.
All right. Well, Bob, anything else that you think is important that people should know?
I don't think so. I mean, again, we're fighting this, and we encourage the public to join with us and help do this. And we've got to get this under control. It really is unaffordable for folks.
Bob, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so again, that is talking to the Oregon Citizens Utility Board. Thank you to Bob for being a part of that, as I mentioned there at the end. Now, we did reach out to PGE, and I do have their statement in part right here. The rate review process is a multi-step, months-long proceeding that takes into account. Here, let me see if I can just pause that real quick, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at this so we can all watch this. There we go. Again, we are live. Here we go. The rate review process is a multi-step, months-long proceeding that takes into account a variety of factors, including ongoing power costs, customer and stakeholder input, settlement decisions, and is ultimately decided by the Oregon Public Utilities Commission. The recent adjustment in PGE's rate review ask is primarily due to power costs. So again, there we go. That is what PGE's statement was for these recent ones. Now, talking about the Oregon Public Utilities Commission, we have actually done an interview with them. We did this earlier this year here on Fox 12 Now, so that is available. If you go to KPTV.com, click on the Fox 12 Now tab, Fox 12 Oregon app, or our YouTube channel, just go there under the live section, and you can find that interview with one of the representatives, one of the commissioners on that panel, talking about how they go about their process. So a lot to learn with this, but certainly a lot of opinions about these requested rate increases. And we'll continue to follow this and keep you up to date with everything that we know. If there's more you'd like to learn about, more interviews you would like to have, certainly send me an email, fox12now@kptv.com, fox12now@kptv.com. Again, we did reach out to PGE, but we received that statement. But if there's any other organization or something else you would like to do a deeper dive on. We are here to do that, or we'll do our best to try to make that happen. So Fox 12 Now at kptv.com. That's it for right now. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.